Andy and Gina Hansen are enjoying a vacation in Brazil. Gina wonders if they have enough money to live there permanently, and Andy says he'll think about it, clearly liking the idea too. Meanwhile, in Westchester, New York, a jewelry store robbery is about to happen. A woman opens the store and soon a masked man storms in, threatening her and demanding the jewels. As he struggles to open a glass display, she grabs a gun and shoots him. While on the floor, he shoots her back, but as he tries to leave, she shoots him again, sending him flying through the door. The getaway driver, still in disguise, escapes and angrily curses Andy's name.
Andy! Stupid!
3 days earlier, Andy watches his niece's softball game with his brother Hank. Andy offers to pay for snacks, but Hank declines and there's clear tension. Later, Hank drops his daughter Danielle at her mother's house, where his ex immediately scolds him for not caring properly for her and reminds him he owes 3 months' support. Hank explains he's financially stressed from paying for school. That night, at a bar, Andy tells Hank they both need money and suggests robbing a jewelry store, an insured one worth $600,000, which could earn them $60,000 each.
What are you saying?
It's worth about 600 grand.
If sold on the black market. Andy insists it's safe and victimless, but Hank refuses. Andy pressures him, hinting at family issues and sarcastically bringing up Hank's wife. Later, Hank skips work for his usual Thursday visit, this time to meet Gina, Andy's wife, with whom he's having an affair. Hank wants more from the relationship, but Gina says he should accept what they have since he's drowning in debt. At Danielle's school play, Hank beams with pride. After the show, Danielle asks for $130 for a school trip, and Hank, feeling pressured in front of his family, agrees.
Yes, money.
Well, it's $130, but we're staying overnight and that includes hotel and everything.
Okay, great, yeah.
Later, Hank visits Andy at work and agrees to the robbery. Andy suggests targeting their parents' jewelry store, which shocks Hank. They both know the store well, but Hank doesn't want to rob it. Still, Andy gives him $2,000 in advance. Hank gives $900 to his ex, promising the rest soon. She insults him, and he leaves. Hank then meets Bobby Lasorda and tries to get him to help with the job, offering cash to convince him. On the day of the robbery, Hank rents a car and picks up Bobby, who is late.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby, for Christ's sake, Bob, we gotta go.
I just gotta throw on some clothes. Only take a second. Shh.
Bobby's partner complains about the noise but gives him some orange juice before they leave. On the way to Westchester, Hank changes into his disguise at a gas station. Bobby mocks him and says he'll go in alone with his gun. Hank insists no one should get hurt. Bobby listens to heavy metal to get ready, and once the store worker arrives and the view clears, Bobby enters the store. Hank hears gunshots and sees Bobby crash through the door, wounded. Panicked, Hank drives away, removes his disguise, and calls Andy to say everything has gone wrong. Andy is stunned. 4 days before the robbery, Andy gets a call from Gina saying their bank account is empty. After the call, Andy prepares drugs for himself but is interrupted by his boss, reminding him a meeting is starting. Andy, embarrassed, joins the meeting, where they're told the IRS will begin an audit, starting with payroll, his department. He pretends everything is fine, though he's clearly stressed. Back in his office, he grabs some cash from a lockbox and visits a fancy apartment. A young man with a weapon lets him in and offers him a drink. Andy walks through the place, takes off his shirt, and lies on the bed. The man stores some cash and injects Andy with heroin. As Andy comes to, the man tells him he's going to miss the life he's living. Andy talks to Gina, trying to convince her to move to Brazil. He says he's clever and knows how to handle things. Gina jokes that she's sure he does and mentions that Brazil doesn't have an extradition treaty with the US. When she asks what he's planning, Andy just tells her not to ask questions and to trust him. Gina gets excited. Andy then goes to a shady jeweler in Midtown who buys stolen jewelry. He says he was just checking if the jeweler was still there and promises to return. The story flashes back to when Andy gives Hank $2,000 in advance for the robbery. Hank asks what they'll do, but Andy makes it clear that Hank will be doing it alone. Andy says he's been seen too often at the mall due to a real estate deal, so he can't risk being recognized. He tells Hank to use a toy gun to scare the elderly woman working at their parents' jewelry store, put her in the back, and take the jewels. Hank is unsure, but Andy is persuasive and desperate. Returning to the present, where Hank calls Andy to say everything has gone horribly wrong. At the hospital, Hank is there when Andy and Gina arrive. Andy asks what's going on, and Hank says their dad called him. A nurse tells them that a woman named Annette Hansen was brought in 3 hours earlier with gunshot wounds. They're stunned. Hank finds their father, who says Annette is unconscious. The night before the robbery, Charles talks to Hank and their sister Catherine, who wishes him luck for his driving test and birthday. The next morning, Nanette tells Charles that Doris can't open the shop and she'll go in later. Charles says he'll pick Nanette up after his test. But when he arrives, he sees police outside the store. He stops before reaching her and realizes something terrible has happened. At the hospital, Charles stays by Nanette's side, telling her he loves her. A doctor says there's no brain activity and little hope. Outside, Andy questions why Nanette was working. Charles explains and asks where Hank is. Andy says Hank can't handle seeing her like that. The next day, Charles reads that the robber has been identified. He wonders why someone would travel just to rob their store. Angry and confused, he visits the police station but gets no answers. He later tells Andy he has to make a decision about Nanette's life support. Obsessed with the case, Charles finds out the gun came from Texas and was bought with a fake license. Catherine tells Andy to stop pressuring their dad, but Andy insists it needs to be done. Charles, overwhelmed and desperate, crashes his car into a police vehicle and drives off. He later makes the painful decision to remove Nanette from life support. Hank and Andy are left speechless. At her small funeral and the wake, Hank, full of guilt, walks out. Charles calls him weak. On the day of the robbery, Hank wipes down the rental car and returns it. He tries to explain to Danielle he can't afford her school trip. She gets upset, calls him a failure, and hangs up. That night, Hank drinks heavily and passes out. He's awakened by an angry voicemail from Andy, who is furious that Hank brought Bobby and a gun into the robbery. They meet at a bar where Andy asks about any witnesses. Hank says no one saw them, possibly forgetting or lying about Bobby's wife. He also says the car was cleaned. When Hank gets home, there's a message from the car rental company saying he left personal items behind. He panics. The next day, he goes back, but the manager isn't there. That night at the bar, Bobby's wife Chris shows up with her brother Dex. Dex demands $10,000 for Bobby's death to help Chris and her child. He says he didn't like Bobby, but at least Bobby supported them. Dex threatens to go to the police, but says he'd rather not, and demands the money in 2 days, keeping Hank's license as security. Hank asks his ex-wife for help, but she refuses and just wants what he already owes. That night, Hank thinks about ending his life but doesn't. Later, during the wake, he steps outside, crosses the street, and calls Gina. She coldly tells him now isn't a good time and hangs up. Hank picks up a CD from the rental company and returns to his apartment, where he sees the buzzer glass smashed. Inside, he gets a call from Andy and nervously tells him they're in big trouble. On the day of the robbery, Andy is at the hospital with his mother when he receives messages from his boss about urgent financial issues and an upcoming audit. He suggests reopening the jewelry store, but Charles angrily says they might as well burn it down. Andy hears more about unpaid taxes and fake salaries, then tells Gina he has to go to work in the morning. After calling Hank about Bobby, Andy tries to visit his drug dealer but has to wait, spending an hour in a nearby park in withdrawal before finally getting his fix. At a bar, Hank tries to explain things to Andy, who becomes furious about Bobby's involvement. Hank says he was too afraid to do it alone. At the wake, Charles talks to Andy and apologizes for not being the father Andy needed. Andy says sorry too, but shares how he always felt like an outsider and wonders if Charles is even really his father. Charles walks away without answering. Later, Andy visits Hank's apartment, but Hank doesn't respond, so Andy angrily smashes the buzzer. Back home, Gina is packing to leave. She says work wants to speak to Andy and tells him their relationship is over. She also admits she's been having an affair with Hank, then walks out. Andy trashes the apartment, but soon sits in silence. Meanwhile, Charles, stuck in traffic, is upset. A week after the robbery, he buys a gun and visits a jeweler who once dealt with Andy. When Charles asks about the robbery, the jeweler eventually shows him Andy's business card. Shocked, Charles sits down to take it in. Later, Andy calls Hank, who explains that Dex wants $10,000. Andy says he'll come over. Hank, overwhelmed, grabs his passport, packs, and leaves, not knowing Charles is watching. Charles follows his cab to Andy's office, where Andy empties his lockbox and ignores co-workers' warning that the IRS is present. Charles then trails him to a travel agency and later to Hank's building. Andy tells Hank he has a plan to fix things and that Hank must follow his lead. He asks Hank to set up a meeting with Chris and Dex. They go to the heroin dealer's luxury apartment with Charles still following. Andy bursts in, grabs the dealer's gun, beats him up, and shoots a user in the bedroom through a pillow. They take money from the safe. When the dealer charges at Andy with a knife, Andy shoots him too. They wipe away fingerprints and leave. At the meeting, Andy shows Dex the money, then suddenly shoots him and questions Chris's loyalty. When he points the gun at Chris, Hank steps in, saying Andy will have to shoot him first. Andy agrees and points the gun at Hank, saying he knows about the affair with Gina. Hank apologizes and says Andy should just shoot him. As Andy prepares to fire, Chris shoots him in the back and tells Hank to leave. Hank drops money for her and runs out with the bag, not hearing Charles calling after him. Charles tries to follow, but is blocked by police and watches in shock as Andy is taken into an ambulance. Later, Charles visits Andy in the hospital. Andy admits things went wrong and says he never wanted Gina to get hurt. He just needed money. Charles calmly says, "Okay," then quietly tells a nurse that the heart monitor has stopped. She says it's normal and tells him to press reset. Charles returns to Andy's room, sees him sleeping, removes his oxygen tube, and suffocates him with a pillow, ending his life.